Jim Halpert is perhaps the most relatable, normal character to be featured on the hit sitcom The Office. Out of all the crazy personas, Jim is easily the most sane and level-headed. And that's not who we're talking about in this video. Nope. Today we'll be diving into the wild world of Dwight Schrute, who's perhaps the most completely bonkers character on the show.
Oh my God.
And that's saying a lot. I mean, have you seen Creed Bratton? Dwight's role in the series started out as simply a foil to Jim. Jim was the regular, likable, working-class guy that you'd want to grab a beer with, so the writers of the show added a counterpart for him. They made someone so aggressively different that he actually would be comedic in how insane he was. Dwight was created as everything Jim is not. While Jim was meant to be cool, calm, relaxed, and give off a generally chill vibe, Dwight was the exact opposite. He was on edge, he was easily agitated, and he was uber competitive and untrusting. At the start of the series, he was the equivalent of a tiny little chihuahua, constantly shaking and barking. But over time, things change. Despite all odds, the Dwight character actually evolved to be rather endearing to audiences, and he became one of the most popular characters on the show. He went from simply being used as a plot device to build the Jim Halpert character to a headlining part of the series and one of its lead roles. For 3.5 seasons, Dwight is just a goofy antagonist that was easy to root against. Somewhere along the lines, though, the character totally 180s and turns into this hilarious, emotional, endearing part of the show that audiences could surprisingly sympathize with. In my opinion, the exact moment that things turn around is when Dwight saves Jim from an angry, attacking Roy Anderson. That's the moment when Dwight changes from silly nitwit who takes kids' karate classes and gets beaten up by Michael Scott to an actual alpha who can hold his own. He doesn't just talk the talk and consistently prove that he can't walk the walk. The moment that Dwight uses pepper spray on Roy and shows bravery and heroism is when he goes from being a bad guy to a good guy and starts walking the walk. From that point on, all of Dwight's absurd claims and random boasts seem somewhat believable. He comes off a lot more capable and skilled, not just some nutjob conspiracy theorist. Before that episode, which is episode 19 of season 3, Dwight is consistently shown as a buffoon.
And if you cannot behave like ladies, well then you are not going to have a bathroom.
When he and Jim go on a sales call together just 6 episodes prior, we see Jim trick him into banging his head on the back of the seat. And we even see Jim trick him by slapping him in the face. And all that happened throughout one story arc, involving the pair on a sales call together. That happens often, up until episode 19 of season 3. Dwight is naive, gullible, and is constantly being bested or outsmarted. Then things change. Dwight becomes believable, strong, confident, and capable. He has one-night flings at weddings and gets hit on by girls at nightclubs. He owns and operates several successful business endeavors outside of his responsibilities as a paper salesman. He even has friends and a social life. The guy who says he's ravenous after a night of lovemaking is a far cry from the guy who had to ask Toby what a female's genitalia looks like. Dwight starts out the series as a bumbling idiot who constantly gets bested by Jim. Along the way, though, he evolves and turns into an incredibly intelligent individual. For starters, he was the best salesman in the office. He won all sorts of awards and accolades for his efforts. He even beat the computer when Ryan tried instituting the Dunder Mifflin Infinity. So right off the bat, he's better at his job than anyone else in the show. But then he really starts to come into his own. We start to learn more about the beet farm and how large a role he has in maintaining and operating it.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
Bears do not... What is going on?
Then in episode 8 of season 4, we learn that Dwight has even evolved the business to the point where it's not only a functional farm, but it's also a bed and breakfast. Not to mention the farm also sells meat alongside their beet production. So the guy is pulling in income from his regular 9-to-5 where he's a top earner in his department. Then he also owns and operates a triple income side hustle. Then what does he do? In season 7, he friggin' buys the building. Yeah, the building that the Dunder Mifflin Paper Company's offices are in. He just straight up buys it. So now his day job also pays him rent. That's brilliant. And we aren't even done there. He opens up a gym in said building and charges employees of the company a membership fee. We're up to 5 side incomes now, outside of his day job. And his overhead isn't even that wild. He employs his cousin Mose, who if I had to guess isn't getting paid all that much. And in later seasons, Nate, who also can't be making much considering he was originally getting paid cash for day labor while standing outside of a hardware store. Even Dwight's failed business attempts just continue to prove his entrepreneurial spirit. He invented a device that could cut slabs off a horse without killing it. That Sears unfortunately already said no to, but several other brands were considering. He also mentions having gold buried, so there's no telling what kind of fortune Dwight's actually sitting on. Actually, there's one moment that I think best captures the essence of Dwight Schrute. In episode 17 of season 3, right before the Roy Anderson attack and Dwight's shift into character, Ryan asks Michael to speak in front of his business class. Michael, being Michael, uses this as an opportunity to gloat and belittle Dwight by mocking the fact that he didn't even go to business school. Fast forward to the end of the series, though, and Ryan went to jail for defrauding the company, ended up working at a bowling alley and a failed tech company, and ultimately spent his entire arc chasing after a girl who he didn't really like, and only when he couldn't have her.
It's weird. I'd rather she be alone than with somebody. Is that love?
Meanwhile, Dwight turns out to be the most successful entrepreneur on the show, not named David Wallace. I mean, suck it was a home run, what can I say? This new Dwight that evolves after the Roy incident is so much more entrepreneurial at heart. Even when he isn't starting a new company or finding a different source of revenue, he's still finding ways to win. He buys an inventory of the most popular doll on the market just before Christmas so that he can sell them off to shoppers who waited too long. He does the same thing on Valentine's Day, buying restaurant reservations so that he could sell them off for double or triple the price. He's a capitalist, and a darn good one. I didn't even mention the hemp he grows, but we don't want to get flagged, so let's not bring that up. Now, don't get me wrong, Dwight Schrute isn't without his issues either. A lot of those earlier personality traits that were instilled in the character when he was simply meant to be annoying and frustrating never went anywhere. The character may have gotten smarter and more likable, but the main tenets of his personality don't sway too much. As I previously mentioned, he's hyper-competitive, he needs validation from others, he's untrusting, he's constantly on edge, and he has a major inferiority complex that leads him to crave authority. Part of what makes the character so relatable and endearing is the fact that he has these clear issues. Most of his complexes are most likely due to the fact that he has low self-esteem. No matter how confident he may feel or even tell people that he is, confidence and self-esteem are drastically different things. Dwight needs to feel better than everyone, probably due to his strict-sounding upbringing. He kinda doesn't know how not to be competitive. His incessant need for power even leads him to be a volunteer sheriff deputy. It's almost like he's constantly taking out his own issues on other people, which isn't the healthiest way to do that. While Dwight's early life probably wasn't a walk in the park, I should probably also mention his family's checkered history. He's of German descent, with grandparents that probably would have been adults in the 1940s, and he even mentions that some of them fled to Argentina. Yeah, I'll let you fill in the blanks on that one, but even the battle at Schrute Farms, which was uncovered when the office visits Gettysburg, turns out to be marred in controversy. In a way, Dwight's evolution into a character who not only talks the talk but can walk the walk means he becomes even more problematic. Because the more credible Dwight is, the more his backstory and his family's backstory is likely to be true. There's maybe no better way to gauge Dwight's evolution as a character than by taking a look at his relationships with other people in the office. Let's start with his original counterpart, Jim Halpert. These two were meant to battle it out for eternity. It's a tale as old as time, good versus bad, light versus dark, hero versus villain. That was Jim and Dwight.
Identity theft is not a joke, Jim.
But then Dwight saved Jim. And at that moment, he kind of took the upper hand. Rather than being Jim's mortal enemy, he slowly started becoming Jim's friend. Sure, they still bickered and argued, but those always felt more like two siblings fighting. Their disputes in later seasons are mostly a result of them playfully messing with one another and not quite the same feel as the pranks Jim pulls in earlier seasons simply to frustrate his foe. Heck, by the end of the series, Jim is Dwight's bestest mensch at his wedding. In the 21st episode of Season 2 titled Conflict Resolution, Dwight gets so worked up over one of Jim's pranks that he threatens to quit if Jim isn't fired. By episode 13 of Season 3, when Dwight quits the company, he hugs Jim goodbye. Their relationship has already begun shifting. By the time we get to the finale of the 5th season, Dwight and Jim are celebrating a volleyball score together and helping each other out by stalling for time. In a short window of time, they go from being arch rivals to friends who kind of mess with each other. By episode 9 of Season 9, Jim is literally changing travel plans to stay and make Dwight happy on Christmas. The series even ends with Dwight firing Jim and Pam out of love, so they can get a severance package and not have to quit. They love each other, you guys. Okay? And as much as Dwight has a soft spot for his frenemy Jimbo, there's another character who he adores even more. The Dwight Michael relationship is a twisty and turny one. At the beginning of the series, Dwight is a suck-up. He kisses Michael's butt, but it's really only to benefit himself. He's simply trying to go ahead and move as high up the ranks as he can, so he attaches himself to the top of the ladder. Michael is so clueless and ignorant and just loves the attention and adoration, so it goes relatively unnoticed. He lets Michael act like he's above him, but is quick to throw him under the bus or stab him in the back. Dwight even goes so far as to try and usurp Michael's role as branch manager by calling a secret meeting with Jan. That same episode, Dwight shows his true colors to Michael by talking negatively about his car as soon as he believes he has power over him. He can essentially stop sucking up and lets his true feelings be known, which causes Michael to break the charade and call him out. His loyalty is clearly questionable at best, especially during the beginning of the series. However, as the character progresses and changes, so does the dynamic between Dwight and Michael.
I know.
You know what?
Jan called me about your little meeting.
No?
It goes from Dwight thinking that Michael's an idiot, who he just has to appease for his own benefit, to Dwight actually thinking that Michael is the greatest man to ever live. By the middle of season 3, where the character really starts to shift, we can suddenly tell that Dwight genuinely looks up to Michael and wants to be his friend. And it's not just because it's his boss either. In later seasons, we see Dwight work under different managers such as D'Angelo Vickers and Andy Bernard, and he doesn't show them anywhere near the same level of respect. It wasn't the manager position that Dwight respected, it was Michael. Dwight's love life is another excellent microcosm of his evolution as a character. He starts out with absolutely zero knowledge of anything. He literally asks the head of human resources to explain the female anatomy to him. That's how clueless the character was. However, by the middle of season 3, he evolves into a pretty confident and ambitious ladies' man. He has a one-night stand with Pam's cousin at her wedding. He gets a drink bought for him by a girl at a New York City nightclub. He also has a short relationship with a gorgeous woman from the neighboring farm. However, as great as he miraculously becomes with women, he once again turns into a fool when he gets close to one. That's the case with Angela Martin, whom he shares a multi-year on-again, off-again relationship. She's equally as odd and peculiar as he is, so they actually make a perfect couple.
Are you enjoying your vegetarian noodles?
Very much. How's your meat?
Dry.
But Dwight is just no good at romantic relationships. He kills her cat, he enters into a legally binding contract to have a baby with her, and he's generally just super weird with her. These are all not things that you should typically do with or for someone you love. Dwight just ain't great with feelings. That isn't to say he doesn't have them, though. When they break up for the first time, Dwight takes it hard. Jim even finds him weeping by his bed in the middle of the night. And Dwight is visibly heartbroken when he finds out Angela was also sleeping with her fiancé, Andy. Despite the fact that she was with someone else and only using him to cheat, he was so swept up and in love that he thought they'd end up together. The same thing happens in later seasons when Angela marries Senator Robert Lipton. For whatever reason, they keep coming back to each other, and the series finale is all about their wedding. For two secondary characters, they ended up important enough to be the focal point of the very last episode. Which brings me to an interesting point. Out of all the characters, Dwight ended up with the happiest ending. By the end of the show, not only is he a transformed character, going from hapless, awkward idiot to lovable, intelligent opportunist, but his arc resolves on the highest note out of anyone. Let me break it down. He owns a beet farm that he loves. He also owns the building that he loves working in. He marries the girl of his dreams. His two best friends are by his side at his wedding, both happy for him. He ends up fulfilling his dream of being the regional manager at Dunder Mifflin. Literally, everything works out in the end for the guy who started out getting frustrated because his stapler was in Jell-O. By the end of the series, he's a more sociable guy, more personable, and seems to even develop some self-awareness that he was always sorely lacking. Even his relationships are healthy. He no longer puts Michael on a pedestal. He's no longer competitive with Jim in a constant game of one-upmanship. He's a happily married husband and father working his dream job. That's the happiest ending of all. Sure, Jim married Pam and followed his dreams, but he was still forced to leave his hometown and the job that he grew so fond of. The same can be said for Michael, who ends up marrying Holly and starting a family with her, but it came at the sacrifice of giving up the job he loved. Pam basically compromised everything in order to appease Jim. Andy ends up humbled by humiliation. I could keep going. Everyone ends up happy, but with at least a bit of a caveat. Dwight is the only one who gets everything he wanted without having to compromise at all. Of course, the Dwight character is a spin-off of the original UK version of the show, but after 9 seasons of evolving and growing, the finished Dwight is nowhere close to the version he started out as. What began as a comedic foil, meant to be a stubborn moron, turned out to be the smartest one on the show, the most successful character, and debatably the most beloved by audiences. How do you feel about Dwight Schrute? Which version do you prefer? Leave us a comment in the section below letting us know your thoughts. Before you go, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications. Also, do us a solid and hit that thumbs up button because it helps. It just does, okay?